Hello YouTube, I'm going to show you how I find the perfect knife for myself, hopefully for you too, and it'll also show you things that are important when finding knives.
First things that I like to do personally is I like to go onto a website like Amazon. You can even use eBay if you wish, Blade HQ, go to one of those sites and just have fun.
Right now the point isn't to pick a knife, the point is to just enjoy looking through knives. It's to get yourself a taste for knives for the moment before you go on and continue your research. Figure out, well, what's actually important. One thing that's super important whenever you're looking at knives is the steel. What is this thing made out of? Well, there's a wonderful company that tells you about that. That is Blade HQ. If you come down through here, they will tell you edge retention, toughness, corrosion resistance, ease of sharpening about the steels. Now I will tell you right now, do not rely only on the source. Knives, if you look up knives and you do a decent amount of research on knives, you will find that plenty of people argue about knives. The reason being is a lot of people are trying to sell knives, and therefore they're going to talk either really crappy about some knives that they don't sell, or they're going to talk really good about knives that they do sell. And there's a lot of users that just talk about knives. And you can find this. One of the things that I find myself looking up is forums. We'll get into that later. I just use that to check my work, see if these companies are right. But they have edge retention, toughness, corrosion resistance, ease of sharpening. Those are explained up here, but I will do a very, very quick explanation as to them. So, edge retention, that's what it sounds like. Basically, how many times can I cut something before this knife goes dull? Happens to be quite a bit, depending on the steel. Most steels, it's pretty good. I usually stick down here in budget steels. This one right here is 8 CR13 MOV. Except this one is 7 CR17 MOV. This one is 440C. And yeah, it's not the best. Definitely not the best. 3 out of 10 isn't good. But it does its job. Generally what you'll find is knives that have bad edge retention tends to have an easier time sharpening. As you can see, all of these steels that I was just telling you about that were kind of crappy in the edge retention side, they're doing fantastic in the ease of sharpening. Continuing on, corrosion resistance, I find that a lot of the cheaper knife metals have chromium in them, which is what makes stainless steel, and as such, they tend to do well with corrosion. There's Oz 8 is, they're not the best, so don't like throw them into the ocean and just let them sit there for a few years. They probably won't do well, but you know, not bad. 1095 steel is pretty much straight steel. It's not stainless, so that explains why that's a 1. And we're going to talk about toughness. So toughness based off of this company, Blade HQ, toughness is the resistance to chipping or breaking. And it's going to continue along those lines. So when we're talking about knife hardness, something specific comes up a lot of times inside of knife calculations, and that will be the HRC number. The HRC number is just simply the Rockwell hardness test. It's an engineering test, you don't need to know a lot about it, but whenever we talk about toughness, think of it as the HRC test. Now, the HRC, the higher the number, this is a simple way to think about it, the higher the number, the more force the metal can take per area. So, PSI. If I'm holding this side and this side of the blade, obviously if it has more area, it's going to last more. Basically, it's force per area. Think of it that way. The higher the toughness, that's fantastic. You're going to save your edge. You're not going to roll it as much. You're not going to chip it as much. That's fantastic. It does not tell you whether or not your blade is going to roll or chip, if it's ductile or if it's brittle. It does not say that. But it does say you're less likely to do those two things. Problem being is it will absolutely make your blade harder to sharpen. And that's the simple rundown. I'm going to attach 2 links in the description. One of them is Blade HQ. The second one is a Marine Corps guy. He talks about this stuff and a lot more in detail. I can also make a video specifically on this topic because I've gone over a lot of this stuff in my engineering classes, but I feel like going over it that much in this video would be overwork, so I'm not going to. Continuing on, if you want specific knife metals, you want to look through that in here, you can just look up the specific metal that you want. Boom, D2. And it'll tell me about D2. All these cool, pretty little properties about D2. Yay! Who gives a crap? So you want to think about your knife and ask yourself the question, why do I want a knife? What purpose does it serve me? Why am I trying to spend my hard-earned cash on a hunk of metal? Ask yourself that. What are you going to use it for? Seriously. Me personally, what I want to use my knife for is I want to use it as a little EDC thing that I throw in my pocket and it sits there all summer long. I don't want it to be this small, but I want it to be fairly concealable, A, and B, I want it to just be able to exist inside of my pocket in a formal location, in an office, and just let it sit there, not worry about it. It should just disappear within my clothing. I want it to open up quickly and just be accessible when I need it. I want it to be able to do some rougher things if needed, but if I'm in a rougher location, I'm probably just going to bring a fixed blade anyways. Those are some thoughts you might want to think about, that sort of deal. Now, if you want something and you know you're just going to be chopping stuff, chop, 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 chop. That's cool. That's another thing you might want to think about. If you want a knife and you need to be doing bushcraft, carving, what have you, cool. If you want to go out and you want to have a pocket knife, something that opens and closes, but you're going to be doing Boy Scout sort of work, that's cool. Go for it. But you need to figure out what you want your knife to do. Once you've decided what you want your knife to do, think and process, okay, what things are important to me on this? Me personally, I find my experience with knives, it's happened on this knife, is that I get flat spots. So right in here, I've rolled the edge of the knife. That's not good. But I find that a lot. And so I'm going to find a knife that can preferably deal with the abuse that I put it through. I also want to find a knife with a nicer pocket clip, or at least one that I can fix easier than this one. I also want a knife, I'm not worrying too much about this, but what I do want is I don't want a big hunking piece of crap sticking out of my pocket because it's supposed to be an office location. I'm not trying to have a big hunkin' piece of knife, and I'm okay with having a knife that's less stable so that I can conceal it better. There's a couple different things that we can go into, but one of the big ones is belly size. I'm not going to go entirely into blade geometry, but I will tell you the very simplest parts of it. This is a knife blade. This is the belly of the knife. This is the point of the knife. When we're looking at knives, generally knives with a better belly, a more curved belly, like this, are better for slicing and chopping. Well, not chopping, but slicing like that. Very simple, very beautiful. But it's not as good at poking. Knives with a shallower belly aren't as good at slicing. This one's very sharp. I just got it, so it's better at slicing. But they're better at poking. And so you might want to think about that. Are you going to be doing a lot of slicing and carving? You might want a knife with a better belly. Or, transversely, thinking about it, carving, you might actually want this length to be better and longer. So you can have that nice flat edge. Because most of the time when I find myself carving, I'm carving like this. I'm not carving like this. This is uncomfortable. This is very comfortable. If you think you're going to be opening a lot of letters, opening up a lot of boxes, you're not really worried about the, not worried about this as much. If you're going to be cutting boxes, you are. But those are some thoughts. Another one is that I find that cleavers are really good if you put the point and you just dig it into something, it's slicing. That's another thought. Another thought, depending on how much abuse you're going to give your knives, is how thick the blade is. This has a fairly thin blade. This does not have a thin blade. I can put the blade with a thicker blade through more abuse. Simple as that. Another thought, so remember, something that's important to me is how well I can open a knife, how quickly I can deploy it. This knife has a pocket clip right here. So to open it, not only do I have to take it out and then flip it around, I then also don't have the nice bearings to give me the open. So it takes longer to take out. Let's do that again. It's about the fastest I can open that. This knife has a pocket clip on this side. There is a review about this knife that I disagree about, because it's saying, oh, the knife points up, I'm going to stab myself. They don't like it, they give it a 3-star review. I'm going to say, if you're stabbing yourself because your knife is pointed up like that, close your knife. Don't be a moron. Now try and be me, but don't be a moron. Much faster. Continuing on, this one needs the new pocket clip as well. There's so many things that go into a knife. When you're looking at a knife, do I want it to be a folding knife or do I want it to be a fixed blade? Am I okay with losing, if I want to conceal it, am I okay with losing blade length over it being a fixed blade? What type of lock do I want on my knife? There are so many different types of locks. My computer's gotta be dying right now. Liner lock, slip joint, compression lock, axis lock, frame lock, button lock, ring lock, lever lock. Frame lock is the one that sits back here, you push it down and it comes out. There's also gravity knives, which are apparently illegal. Thanks a lot, government. I should make a video about knife laws that are stupid. So there's gravity knives, there's butterfly knives. You also have switchblades, which would be a lever lock more than likely, of sorts, because it's spring loaded. But there's all sorts of different locks. And if you're not going for that, and you're going for fixed blades, you have a different thought instead. How do you want the blade attached to the handle? Well, this one is called a full tang. because literally the blade doesn't stop. It is throughout, the metal of the blade goes throughout the entire thing, and it's held together by these two rings. That is generally conceived to be the strongest type. You also got this bayonet that's lasted way longer than it should have. It's an M14 bayonet. It is not a full 10. It seems to be, I don't remember the exact name for this, but I do know what a rat tail is. And there's a rat tail knife. That's a knife where you have the blade, comes up, maybe it has a hilt, whatever, and then it comes down to, goes in like this, kind of like a little point. And then, what they did was they had the point sticking out right here, and they put this plate on, and they hammered that thing into place. They hammered the end of the tail. And that's what keeps the plate on. But those are two more common ones, so just be on the lookout for that. Continuing on, what I would do from here is I would go back to Blade HQ. I would pick a knife. For this, I picked Oz 8. So Oz 8, that's the knife steel that I decided to go for because it's fairly cheap, but it does really well in pretty much everything except edge retention, which is exactly what I wanted. Oz 8, shop all Oz 8 knives, and filter it by weight. We can filter it by handle material. By the way, aluminum is more slippery, so this is more likely to go whoop than this. One thing you may want to know, this has a stud, which allows me to open it really fast. This doesn't, but it does have an axis lock, which is pretty nice. This doesn't either. You don't have to pick from this list. I usually don't pick from this list. But when I was looking through this, I actually found a Spyderco knife that I really enjoy. A lot of times what I will wind up doing is not going through this site and picking anything, generally because the prices aren't fairly high on here. And I'll go back over to Amazon and I'll say, okay, EDC knife, and we were looking at AUS 8, Oz 8. A lot of times whenever you're looking through this, it won't give you what you want. It'll give you something like Damascus, it'll give you D2, it won't give you Oz 8. Which is annoying about Amazon. But a lot of times what I'll wind up finding is I'll find a knife and I'll find a cool steel. Okay. It's not exactly what I wanted, but it's a pretty cool steel. Let me do some research on it. Yes, this is the same steel as this knife has, 14C28N. A lot of people haven't heard of that steel. Okay, so they do have it. In fact, it was an even better version of Oz 8. And that's fantastic. That's even better. So we look it up, Control V, Control F, and we just start looking. And usually this is the point when I'll wind up finding forums. These people talking about the steel, whether or not it's good or not. Yep. Continue to read the blog post. What is it? Chemical composition, hardness, yada yada yada. They'll tell you a little bit about it. Here's the composition. Carbon, chromium, as I said. Chromium, plenty of chromium. That means it's going to have a high resistance to corrosion. And then I looked at the equivalent, and this is exactly what I found when I was looking up the knife I'm going to show you. And very close to Oz 8. It's fantastic. That's what I was looking up in the first place. Good bang for the buck. This is what people think. I usually also click on the 1 star, see what those people thought, what was wrong about that. Here's Reddit. Reddit is fantastic. People love to talk on Reddit. Oh, this is a wonderful knife, yada yada yada. This is actually the exact same knife I'm looking at right here, Fintiso. So what do people think of it? Well, actually, they have $35. So, but yeah. Just grab the aluminum scales from the one They'll talk about it, tell you what they think, and their experiences with the knife. They actually have a Facebook, I'll look into that. see, okay, what's happening on here? What are they doing? How active are they? How new are they? When was their first post? 2023. This is a fairly new company, more than likely. Let's look up. Ooh. There's some YouTube videos. Usually I'll look through these as well. What people actually think. It seems that this person may have actually bought the exact knife that we're looking at. Nope. It's a different one. But once again, it's another person talking about the knife, so always good. Tells you more about the knife. And once I've done my research, I've looked through the different knives. Is this a good steel? Yada yada yada. Gone through the rabbit hole of metals and different blade types and all the such. I then find a knife that I really like. It does exactly what I need it to do. It's small, it's agile, it's fast to open, the pocket clip is on the right side. I usually also love to have jimping at the front. Unfortunately, this knife does not have that. It does have it at the back for whatever reason, which is just weird to me. But it does what I want it to. And it also has that cool steel I haven't seen before. And I went to experiment with steels, trying to get Oz 8. I didn't wind up getting that. Oh well. This knife seems to do well though. Anyhow, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Remember to like and subscribe. Some videos will come up in a second. If you like knives, if you like rifles, fantastic, click one of them. Catch you all in the next one.